Hello! Interactive session, lots of me talking, lots of you asking questions, and keep it really nice and informal. So my name's Godfrey, just grabbing clicker. I've got a great story to tell, as I'm sure you all do as well, but let me get this right. That's me, living in Taree, where I live, and this has pretty much been a lot of my life, travelling the world, doing corporate innovation. So I'm going to share some stuff with you today as to who the hell I am, what have I learnt, particularly from the corporate innovation side. So I see more and more startups coming into corporate to try and figure out how that plays, and being in this world, working with lots of different startups, what's the language and how does that all work? And I see stumbling blocks all the time. So if I can share what some of those are with you today, then that would be really cool. So just a little bit of a blurb about me before we get into the work stuff, because actually I think it's much more important. I'm just a normal mum of 3 people, tiny people, 7, 4 and 3. I spend half of my time at home with my husband Scott, who's an electrician, who works around my diary, and then half of my life just being a normal mum, and then another half of my life doing this kind of stuff. So I'm a very firm believer clearly in you don't have to be in Sydney, you don't have to do all these kind of things that sometimes think that you need to be. If you're really passionate about something in innovation or something that you're aiming to do, you just get on and do it. My life is one of logistics in terms of how I kind of manage it all together, but I've learned some pretty cool life stories along the way, so that's how I'll try and help. So in terms of the work stuff, I kicked off my career working in agency life, so I guess having to come up with ideas, work with really creative people, but most importantly, which is the lesson I guess for you guys, is you can have a great idea, but if you can't sell it, then forget about it. So you've got to learn really quickly as to here's what my widget is, this is what I'd like to do, and then here's how you can help me, and this is how it works. So one of the best things that I learnt from my time in agency land, and I worked in Sydney and I worked in Chicago for a couple of years, is the golden agency language is reasons to believe. So in your pitch, and when you're trying to get an idea across the line, if you don't have 3 kick-ass points that you can tell someone, it's gone. I just see it all the time. So people really can't, you can call it your elevator pitch, you can call it your 2-minute whatever. If you can't express to somebody really quickly as to, here's what blah, 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 and then 1, 2, 3, people just tend to start doing the nod and smile, I call it, like I'm listening and I'm looking at you, but I'm not really taking it in anymore. And when you're in agency side and you're having to come up with stuff, and they could be really, really big ideas or they could be tiny little things, that's the lesson. So get very familiar with your 3 reasons to believe as to whatever the hell you're trying to do. I spent a massive chunk of my life at the Golden Arches, and I was there for around 10 years at Macca's, and I loved it. I still love the brand. I've had licensees who have seen me this morning getting ready to do a bit of this, emailing through, what are you going to talk about, Anna? What are you going to tell them? I think the thing is that whether you like Macca's or not, I don't really care, because I'm sure some of you will hate it, because people do love and hate big brands. What I would say is take the lessons from what I have learnt and would love to share with you during that time. So when I joined Macca's, it was at a time of horrible, like negative 10% decline. And the number one reason for that was that they weren't listening to what their customers wanted. Pure and simple. You can talk about it all day, but there was a big corporate doing a whole bunch of corporate stuff, and then a whole bunch of disgruntled customers going, yeah, the brand's for kids, and even my kids don't even like it anymore, and there needs to be a whole disruption. So I think the theme from my 10 years at Macca's was one of listen and disrupt. And so we went about creating a whole bunch of programs that really had to change people's perceptions of what we were trying to do at this big brand. But it's not really any different than what you're going to have to do, because people aren't sitting around going, oh my goodness, of course, I've been waiting for that all of my life. That's excellent, great, thank you so much for bringing that to me. You're going to have to disrupt their thinking and show them and prove to them why this would be a cool thing. Lots of people have a real challenge actually expressing that. And the easiest thing to do is, and I've had to present and sell the programs lots to some really big key stakeholders, right from the global CEO through to the dietitians when I was doing heart tick meals. You can imagine, right? I turn up to the Dietitians Association and 10 of them resigned when I walked in the room. Great start. So when you're talking about not being aligned on common goals and what you're trying to get to because people don't want to listen to your story, good examples of how that is. But I think what you've got to do is get to the big end outcome and say, via this piece of innovation, here's what I'm trying to achieve here. And then help take people on the journey with you. Because actually people love to hear people's stories. I'd like nothing more than to sit down here and hear what you're all doing, and hopefully I'll get a bit of a sense of it. But that's the cool human part. And I think in innovation, in corporate and startup, that's where it gets lost. Because in corporate, there are some very big processes that happen. It's like, it's literally like a machine. And then when you're in it, you look at some smaller suppliers or partners or startups, and you go, how the hell are you going to be able to navigate through this stuff? And a lot of it just stops right there because it's just too hard, like way too hard. So you're chasing the money and the funding and all of the great things that come with that. Corporates just want the solution to go away. Like, here you go, and now go and make it happen. So you've got to kind of really bring that together, and you have to understand the rules of how this beast works, which I'm going to chat a little bit about in a minute, okay? So what did I learn about my time at Macca's? And still learning through lots of different things. And I created some pretty cool things while I was there. So Angus beef burgers and lots of smoothies and frappes, and I had a global menu role, so there were 5 of us around the world that would pretty much take what was happening in the markets, and a lot of the innovation came out of Australia, because Australia, thankfully, is a long way away from the rest of the world. So that means that innovation happens here in our own little hot houses and our own little accelerators, because 24 million people, like really, we're a drop in the ocean. Who cares? If it fails in Australia, it's fine. Like in corporate world, that's like a good job. Well done. We'll try that again somewhere else. I know that sounds so bizarre, but that's actually the conversation that happens. I'm talking about in the big
corporates. So that's a great environment to try and test and fail and do all of those kind of stuff that you need to do. So understanding and navigating your way through some of that is really important, because a lot of the times when I hear people talking to me about stuff, I think your language is not going to get past the first gate. Because you're talking in your world and they're listening for different things. So you've got to kind of understand how, if you're going to go and ask for a big bunch of money from a whole bunch of people, you need to understand what makes them tick as well and what they're looking for. And then you have to adjust to them. Gee, I'd love to stand here today and go, and the both shall meet in the middle. Kumbaya, this will be a beautiful moment. But as I can say at the moment, he who holds, and it's usually a he, it's fast becoming a she, but mostly he who holds the purse strings owns the relationship. So figure that out early and then figure out how to play that game. And if you don't know, you should ask someone that's been there, done that before, or say, do you have any experience in this? Because you don't want to be shot down before you've even had a chance to kind of share the good stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about Macca's in a bit more detail soon. And then where I work now, I do lots of different things now, but I work for a company called Raw Innovation. So basically, what does that mean? We go in and we help big corporates do innovation. And that could be in training their people and culture as to what to do. And it can also be mostly game changer projects. So CEO rings and says, Anna, we need the next $20 million. We don't really know how to do that. I go, a whole bunch of people know how to do that, but not necessarily the process is connected at the moment. So we kind of help people do that. So we've worked with actually some of the people that you've already had in here. I was saying the Scrub It team that presented a couple of weeks ago. So one of my clients is HCF. So actually I heard HCF talking about the Scrub Up startup in a coffee that I was having with the Chief Operating Officer. I'm like, how cool is that? I know who those people are through this program. And she was, wow, that's amazing. And we need more of that. I'm not sure how we can make that happen. That's the corporate voice ticking, how will we make this happen? But there's certainly desire. And obviously for you guys, that's where the money is. getting into that kind of thing. So I do lots of different things, and then obviously I do a little bit of consulting on the outside, but I really do hate that word because I think it's really quite wanky. So for me, it's much more around coaching and helping people try and figure out what to do. So, breathing for a second. This is the process of innovation that we use. I'm not at all going to step through it, but here's what I'm going to say. Can you tell automatically that I go, there's a process for how things happen? Because that's what corporate uses and that's what they want. So when they think about startups sometimes, which is the great thing about ducking and weaving through and I've got to get this and this is how it happens, this is what you're fighting up against. This is let's get the strategy right, then we'll do some innovation and then we'll make it happen. We'll develop our business cases, we'll then test it, and then we'll launch, and then we'll learn. So most organisations, it might not be as fleshed out like that. That's certainly what we run them through. But that's their headspace. So you have to go, where are we going to play? Where do we come in? Do we come in here in innovation when they're going, we need some new stuff? Or could you, disrupt and be thinking, wow, there's some really cool stuff going on here. Maybe our strategy needs to change to open up a lot more for that. Regardless of whatever it is, again, it's a process. And again, that's how they kind of think about it, okay? And lots of the big successful companies that we work with, that's what they do on a weekly and a monthly basis. They figure out their strategy, which to me is, what are you trying to achieve? And then they innovate. So identify what is the problem, go and chat to a whole bunch of customers. What are the insights and the big things that are bubbling up? Let's have some ideas. Notice that ideas is step 4, not number 1. That's where people go wrong all the time in my space. You actually don't start with an idea, you start with what's the need, what's the frustration, what is wrong here, and then you kind of go through. And then you judge it, hopefully you do a bit of prototyping, that can be bits of paper, it doesn't really matter, or it could be big fandangled manufactured stuff, it's probably an iteration of all of that. And then you move into here. And this is lots of the times when I was at McDonald's and I'd had companies all the time and they'd be saying, we've got this great thing, would you like it? And I'd go, actually I love it, how many could you give me? I could give you 1,000, I go, great, I need 10 million of them though. So how are you going to be able to scale up to where you need to play with the corporate? So I know that sounds a little bit scary, but again, it's just the headspace. That's me walking around thinking 10 million, 10 million, 10 million would be good. And there's probably a bit less than that because Macca's is a bit of a juggernaut. But when somebody says I could give you 100, great, I'll sell that for you in about 3 hours. So what else can you do to get yourself and prove to me that you could actually be a player? So thinking through this kind of stuff when you're presenting and getting that bit right is really, really important. My goodness, if there's one thing I've learnt, it's actually not about some of this stuff though. It's about being the right person and having the social and the people skills and being able to read people. So I think if there's one thing that I have learnt in this role, it's trying to read when people are engaged or not, and then trying my best to figure out how to bring people in and what journey I have to take them on. Because it's all about, that's the real sell. For whatever the thing is, whatever I'm trying to get across the line, whatever I need people to do, if they're not engaged, forget about it. So because of that, I just want to show you these things. So they haven't come out that well in the PowerPoint, I apologise. But there's basically 4 personas that you might even already start recognising that you have, that people generally will have in business. This will make or break conversations that you have when you're trying to get stuff done, okay? So the first one is, some people are fantastic explorers. I think there's an opportunity here, let me go. I would imagine that Mickey and Siobhan, in terms of this space, are really great at encouraging people to explore and to connect and what that could be. Great. So there's some real benefits of this, and most people think that in innovation you jump straight to this space, and that's not the case at all. So you need to be able to explore what it is. You also need to be able to honestly create. But that doesn't have to be, oh my goodness, I'm an architect or I'm an engineer and that's the creative person because she used to work in advertising and marketing. Everybody is creative. You have to recognise and really bring out your creative skills when you're thinking, selling, planning, doing, making stuff happen. Then there's the judge. beware. Lots of times when they're trying to sell stuff, people feel like I play this role really well and that's my job. In corporations, the more senior that you get, the more people that think that they have to play this role. So what do good judges, what should they do? What do normal judges do? If I walked across the road to the courthouse over there.
Make decisions.
Yes, absolutely. They make decisions. And hopefully they weigh up, there's this and I make a decision. Their job necessarily is not to say yes or no. And in innovation, that's how it plays out in terms of being a judge. People feel like my answer is to go, yes, absolutely, let's do that. But most commonly, it looks very powerful if you say, no, we've actually tried that before, or no, we don't have enough money for that. And your idea, all of your hopes and dreams, right there. Because it's a very powerful position. So when I talk about reading people, that's what I'm starting to talk about in terms of what is this person giving me this vibe, because they're pretty much going to fit into one of these categories. The last person is a warrior. This is actually me. I spend all of my career and I love doing this. I'm like, let's go. We've got to get all of these things to over here. I need to speak to these people and let's move it, people. This is what we need to do. And I need to go and speak in Macca's language, a whole bunch of licensees, and this is going to be amazing. Let's do this. So if you're in this role, you're not really that interested in exploring. So I sit in meetings all the time and I go, right, so you, sir, are the creator and you're talking about all of this. And then the other person on the other side of the table is this. And they go, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's great and all. So when can we do it? And what does it look like? And how are we going to get that? And you're in this world and they're in this world. Or imagine this one and this one. I was kind of thinking that maybe what we should do is, and we've been out there exploring, and this person feels a great desire already whilst you're still exploring. No, that's not going to work because we've tried that before and blah, 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 blah. So start to really think and appreciate how people are when you're presenting, because I see this all the time. So think through what kind of person. I've told you what kind of person I am. So I can tell you right now that whilst I display all of these types of characteristics, and I have to in working in innovation every day of my life, but I have a particular bent for this. So people know that to get Anna excited, so what we're thinking, Anna, and how this could roll out is blah, 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 blah. And I go, great, maybe we could also, and I'm into that kind of space because I just have a natural affinity to getting it done. So that's one thing. Another thing I want to tell you is about this. These are barriers and enablers to innovation. So if you're thinking about, why the hell does this keep happening to me? Or this seems to be going really, really well, and it's not maybe just my idea. That's amazing, I'm sure it is. But what else is it? So this is how this happens. People will give you a big fat no and a stop and be a real barrier if their behaviour, very closely linked to their attitude, is no. That's the tried it before, not interested, I've seen a million of you, I don't trust what you're going to bring me, can you really deliver that? And then their attitude will very much be, you know, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right. So you've got a job to do in convincing people, hearts and heads, what this is. Lots of times in innovation, things just don't go anywhere because the people don't have the skills to actually do it. So they might be a fantastic salesman, they've got this great idea, but when it actually comes to doing it, and innovation is a team sport, so if you're thinking that you're just going to be out there running by yourself, it's not how it happens. So you really need to muster a whole bunch of people with you. And if you don't know who they are, again, ask. I feel like people in my position all the time go, sure, I'd love to help you. We had a situation this morning, there were a couple of people come in and I'm like already thinking, yep, I know those people. I could help them, connect them with whatever. But mostly, guess what happens? Nobody asks. They're just in their own little world and they're not prepared to do that. Making sure that your environment is right. So this is a terrific environment that you've got here. If you're trying to get creative things done in a boardroom situation in corporate, forget about it. Because the boardroom is where what happens? Decisions are made. So if you need a decision, go to the boardroom. But if you need it to be here's where I'm at, I'd love to greenhouse with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts, I would never be doing that in a boardroom. That doesn't mean that you have to come to a space like this. You could be outside or go to wherever everybody has a coffee or whatever. But you just got to read the environment sometimes for what conversations that you want. Structure is a really important one because basically corporates think in a certain way. Because of that process that I showed you before, that's how it is. So don't get killed off simply because you're not reading and working within their structures. And the best way to know their structures is to what? Ask. I always say that. So how do you guys play this here? How does that go down? Who are the decision makers? And it's like, not like, I can't believe she's asking me those questions. It's like, right, she's just reading the play. So I can figure out what I've got to get through, the structures and the people and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully a little bit of that has been able to help you navigate some stuff, because this is the daily grind of what happens. Innovation, best thing ever. I'm so thrilled that I get to do this stuff every day. But I see a lot of this, and I see a lot of conversations stop here because people aren't being able to read it. And you probably can think of a number of situations where you've been in where you just butted heads with somebody or you just can't seem to get it across the line. If you retrospectively, ain't that lovely, but if you're able to kind of go, oh my goodness, I was talking in this mode and I was maybe not signalling to the person that I was in this space. I wasn't really in this space. I didn't want them to help be in judge mode and make decisions. I was just exploring. Let's just sit down and have a chat and let me learn and bloody blah, blah, blah. Or I might have been in this space. I'm not really interested in anything to do with this yet. I just want to have where could this go? So the best thing I would suggest that you do is that you help people and you signal. Can you and I have this kind of conversation? Because that's all I need from you right now. 10 minutes of your time, I just need to think this part through. Or I'm really getting close to having to commercialise something and I'm going to present, I need some funds, whatever. I need you to be your best judge to help me and bounce off so I can practice some stuff, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to shut up in a second because I'm really hoping that you've got some great questions about all of that, because I'd love us to have a good quality Q&A going on, because hopefully I've just hit you with a whole bunch of stuff and then you might have come up with some questions that you've got around certain situations. If it's about your personal stuff as well, more than happy to kind of go through that. And yeah, that's me. So hit me. What have you got?
My question is around being an intrapreneur,
Yep.
as opposed to the entrepreneur, and doing that at McDonald's. You mentioned that when you arrived, the business was negative and they were very closed in their thinking. What did the team look like that was charged with shifting that?
Great question. So before that team, and I'll tell you what that team looked like, was what it looked like to get them into that position was one of structures. So they were very siloed in their thinking. So I actually I want to show this as well, because I love flip charts. And PowerPoint, I'm kind of done with PowerPoint. I do a lot of PowerPoint. So what the organisation at Macca's was, and I see this time and time again, is that think about the marketing team, think about the supply chain team, thinking about the finance team, think about the legal team, think about the operational team. Everybody is trying to get to here by going like that, right? That's what lots and lots of, and people, I come into businesses, corporates all the time and they go, we just can't seem to get to that because you're all doing your own thing. That's what you're doing. The minute that you flip that model, which is what we did, and we went, that's where we're trying to get to, and then we're going to have teams of people working, and they might be like this, but we're all going that way, and we all have to work together to do it, completely changes the culture. So lots of people will have this siloed approach, and it's like you've got to smash the silos. So the team that they brought in, and I was part of that team, were people that could collaborate really well together, people that could sit down and shut up and listen to somebody else, as opposed to being this is the other thing. You guys have all heard of De Bono, right? I'm sure you've all heard of good De Bono. It's a big one on lateral thinking. If you haven't, look it up. So what happens is that people, the older that they get, and some of you don't have this yet, and it's a gift, a wonderful gift, that when you have all these different things and you've learned all these things, right, in the mountains, all of that rain, this is lateral thinking, get really, really big, deep rivers of experience. But what happens when you need to collaborate and work in a different direction, like in that situation at Macca's, people totally struggle to get out of their deep river of thinking. Because I'm really good at marketing or operations, I got these. But I can't think of how being an operations person and working with supply chain. Actually, I'm not very good at that. Putting myself in the shoes of somebody else. So the types of people that you end up bringing together when in those magical environments, they're people that can work really well and go, I don't know really much about your world, but this is my world. Now let me learn from your world so that you and I can work together. And the people that can do that, they do amazing things. The people that go, but I'm the ops expert, so you ask me and I'll tell you what the answer is. I go, never going to happen. Good luck with that. Merry Christmas. I'll see you next year because unless you're going to change your culture, it's not going to happen. So when you're starting out, and you are, some of you have no doubt will be forming right now. I have a very, very deep river of innovation because I've been doing this for a while. Lucky it's innovation. But the minute that somebody starts talking to me about financial stuff and Excel spreadsheets and whatever, my eyes tend to glaze over and I go, oh, it's not really my thing actually. So I would immediately phone a friend and go, help me get out of my river and see it how you need it. Like Margaret will talk in a whole language because I know she's a financial expert and I go, my bad, I'm out. So what do I need to do to help and learn and figure out how we could better work together? So be really conscious of that, and when you're working in teams or forming teams that you are going to work with, be really careful about your river of thinking, knowing that the big companies, when they do stuff like that, they specifically hire on maybe somebody that doesn't even have as much experience, but they're really open to new ways of thinking. And they can collect all of their rivers together and they can achieve some really big things. Like when I was at Macca's, we moved that beast from a $2.4 billion to a just under $5 billion business. That's a significant shift by doing things like that and by listening to your customers. I'm just going to show you that because it's a couple of other things. I didn't talk about customers before and I really wanted to. So no matter what world you're in, here's a couple of top 5 tips from me. You have to immerse in your customer's world all the time. And people give this lip service all the time. Yes, no, I definitely know what my customers are thinking. Here's this thing and this is what they need. Well, really? Well, how many people have you spoken to? And are you constantly talking to them? Because actually people's opinions change all the time. So in innovation, lots of times we talk about immersion and we're saying, go out, be with them, sit with them on a tractor, sit with them in a cubicle, punching out spreadsheets, be in a theatre with the scrub nurses seeing where it's clanky and it's not right and where are they running in and out and in and out. Because you're not going to be able to deliver on whatever your innovation is unless you truly understand. And when you're doing it, there's 3 key things to do. Think smart, act dumb. So what do I mean by that? I might have a really deep river of thinking. In fact, I really do when it comes to chicken. I know a bit about the chook from my time at McDonald's. But if I'm talking to somebody that I need to immerse in the world of beef and chicken, do you think I'm going to go, oh my goodness, I've done this for 10 years, so just give me like what you've got and I've probably heard it before, but hit me. The person's going to go, well, then I'm not going to talk to you about it. You already know about it. But if I go, think smart, act dumb, just wondering if I could ask you a couple of questions about chicken, what your thoughts are and how does that work? People go, oh, sure, I'd love to help you with what I know. So the approach is really, really important. So don't assume anything. Don't assume that you know who I am or how I think. Don't assume that for other people. And then learn the golden rule. Ask a question and then shut your mouth and just wait for them to answer. Because people sometimes are so busy being clever and so busy trying to get the answers in there that they actually just don't listen. And I feel like I learn this lesson every day because I have a 7, 4 and a 3-year-old. Right? So talk about listening and talking about teaching children to listen. But grown-ups don't do this very well in the world of business. They don't. They think that they do, but they don't. So immersing, constantly immersing in where are my customers, what are they wanting? The next thing is to learn from parallel worlds. So just because I'm in, who's got something in here? Who's got a startup or something that they're passionate about in innovation? What have you got?
Robotics.
Robotics, awesome. So you're really passionate probably about everything in the world of robotics. But what could you learn from fast food? Or what could you learn from the health industry? Or what could you learn from not even robotics in the cars, in the whatever, in the aeroplanes, in the whatever, because that's like a natural, like of course you should be, what else is happening in robotics? But what you need to start to do is have a look at completely different parallel worlds, and I do this all the time. I'm like, this is what my challenge is. Who else in the world might face something similar? And then let me go and immerse myself in their world. And then steal it with pride. Like honestly, if they've got it, like happy days, thanks so much. I'll just take a bit of that and bring that back into my world. Because it's not a direct competitor, right? So who cares? So you've got to be really familiar about looking outside and going, if I'm in accountant and I need to better convert blah-de-blah, who else does conversion really, really well? Well, outside of banking and finance, who converts it? Cars. So a salesman. So what can I learn from how that... So you've really got to like push and think about it. And if you do that, I can guarantee you that you'll pick up a whole bunch of new stuff on robotics that you might not necessarily have thought about before because you've immersed yourself in a parallel world. So you have to create the headspace. This seems so simple, but life is busy. And so you don't give yourself enough business to work on your business as opposed to in your business, especially as a startup. It's not like you're like, yes, I've got another 8 hours of my world to give this. You're probably chasing funding and you're probably trying to figure out who those contacts are. But at some point in time, you have to give yourself 10 minutes of, hang on a minute, what am I doing this for? How is this going? So working in the business and on the business. Because your best ideas won't be sitting here going, great, now brain, have ideas. It's not how it happens. How it happens is I'm in the shower and I'm washing my hair and I'm in alpha state, so my brain is relaxed, not busy beater, busy. The minute that your brain goes, whoosah, some of my best ideas are when I'm driving from Tara to Sydney, don't have to think about anything right now, I'm just driving. That's when you have your ideas. So knowing that, and I know that I have great ideas in the shower, that's why I have a pen and pencil in the shower, so I get out and I go, oh God, what was that? And I write it down because my brain is relaxed. So whatever that is for you, you'll become really conscious of this conversation after today and you'll be like, look at me, having all great ideas when I'm walking the dog or whatever it is for you. Number 4 is about fail early to succeed sooner. So you want all of the failures to happen really quickly along the way. Great! Don't be one of these like, oh no, I'm really comfortable with failure, because people say that all the time and they don't really mean it. Like fail, dramatically fail. Fail lots and lots of times so that you get better at picking yourself up and moving on with it. And the best way to do that is to try something, did not work, learn from it and then adapt. And you just keep doing this all the time on pretty much every single thing. I would love to think that you pushed it so hard at each level as you're doing it that you're like, oh, I let that go and I failed it. Good. Pick yourself up, learn from it and go again. Because not enough people are actually comfortable with failing. It's a lot of chat about failure. That's like the boardroom crap that you see, like, you know, failing is magical. Yeah, that's all that. People nodding and smiling, talking about failure. I'm like, truly fail. Like I have had some spectacular fails in my career. Spectacular. Like big dollars. I'm like, that's cool, man, because I learnt from it and I won't do it again, but here's what it is. But if you don't do any fails, like what are you learning from? And then last but not least, I talked about this a lot, but in a corporate sense, people talk about the strategy, they talk about the structure, they talk about the people and the kinds of people they need, and then they talk about the process. So if you can think about that, that's in 4 words, that's what corporate innovation is all about. I think sometimes the more fun I've had is when I've been working with teams of like under 10, as opposed to leading teams of hundreds, because you have a personal relationship. and you get to know the people, and you can go, come on, I know we're both really tired, but like, let me carry you in this bit then, because I know you got some stuff going on in your life. Whereas the more people orientated and human emotion you can leave in it, that's when magic happens. It's the more robotic, literally by the sense of I'm here, I'm doing a job, you don't know anything about me. It's harder to push great things through there. What else have we got, team? Go, Mickey.
So when you're at McDonald's,
Yep.
did you have many startups coming across your desk with ideas?
I reckon less startup, but more that mentality bit on the supplier side. So when I was Director of Innovation, I would say, I've got a team of 5 people, like just in the food part. There's no way that I could, for a nearly $5 billion organisation, do all of that. So the first thing that I would do is, hello suppliers, bring your amazing people in and let's collaborate together. So I would often set briefs and go, here's my challenge, I don't know how we're going to fix this, but who would like to come and play? And actually I can honestly say it wasn't just because there was volume and dollars attached to it, it was like, well that's kind of cool, I don't know how we would do that either, but we'd love to be part of that. So I was very lucky that I had a big community of people, which is essentially what it should be for this. It should be startup and corporation in one place playing together. So I was very much, I'm going to give it to you warts and all, I'm not going to tell you just the nice stuff. Here's where we're really struggling. So you need to know that, because if you're going to play, then here's how it is. So I would always have an open door, and I would set like this kind of space. I had a kitchen, and I'd say, okay, Friday morning from 10 till 12, we are going to be talking about potato. Anybody in the world that wants to work in potato, from farming to manufacturing to packaging to seasoning to doing it in the restaurants to the oil to the equipment to the whatever, feel free to come in. So there was a lot of open doors, and some of the best innovation that I did wasn't with the food manufacturers, it was with the equipment guys. So they were like, I know that you want to start baking, Anna. Yes, I desperately want to start getting some ovens into that kitchen. So here's what the 5-star city restaurants have, and this is how it would apply to your world. Same piece of equipment, you're just going to cook 1,000 million more things in it than what maybe Cafe Sydney might cook. But it's the same thing. So we would end up iterating and figuring that kind of stuff out. But you've got to be open to it. If my starting position was, I've got this, so can you go and make me the thingy? Then it's just a transaction. And there's lots of that goes on too, but the inspiration and the innovation comes from being really open to your business, warts and all. Lots of the bad stuff. You've got to be cool with the bad stuff. Like in your game. I'm pretty sure that there's some stuff that's maybe not great. I'm not asking you what it is, but whatever it is, you've got to start to be really comfortable with going, we are failing here. So what can we learn, or what can we do, or how can I open up the doors? Stuff about it. Any other questions? Time check. Well, if you've got no other questions, thank you so much for having me. I hope I've been able to share a tiny little bit of things to start thinking about in application to your world. My world has been one of that, and if I went back right to my original slide, I think anybody can do fascinating things no matter where they've been in their career. And if you're really passionate about something, go for it and ask for help along the way when you don't have it. You all know me now. So, and I say this, and genuinely, I think I will eye roll, because in a week's time, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder who's in her black book that she might know. I know a few peeps. And then no one ever calls, and I think, how outrageously dumb is that? I've given you an open invitation, but you chose to do nothing about it, so that's your issue, not mine. But I'm standing here to say, if I could help, then I'd love to help. So get on board and innovate. Thank you.